Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to this new edition of the Daily Analysis. Let's start with a recap, as usual, of yesterday's events, a day that began with this overnight news, basically about a judge who challenged Trump's tariff decisions. We'll see what developments come next. As I mentioned yesterday in the morning briefing, it's very likely that the administration will appeal to the Supreme Court, where, well, there are a number of judges who should definitely favor and support the White House. We'll see what developments come next. At the moment, the market. The market's reaction was, of course, an immediate surge at the open, staying at the highs for most of the night and for much of the Asian and European sessions. But then, after a brief moment, it slowly started to pull back, almost hesitantly, as the dust gradually began to settle from all the commotion and confusion that had been stirred up by this particular judge's ruling. And, well, once this whole thing calmed down, the market pulled back. Just as I pointed out yesterday in the daily analysis, it could have been a bull trap, which, for now, has only partially played out, because at the moment prices are sitting on critical levels. It's Friday, and, well, it's important to be twice as cautious today because it's Friday. There are all these things going on with the weekend coming up, and, it's the end of the month. So there are portfolio adjustments. So, guys, double the caution today. From a technical point of view, let's start monitoring some charts, starting with the NASDAQ. As we were saying, right now we're already working around, well, yesterday's lows in the 21,300 area. It even spiked down to 21,280 last night, so there was an attempt to break through the lows recorded yesterday. So pay close attention to this area we're monitoring, 21,280, because breaking through this level could definitely push prices much lower, possibly even retesting the 21,000 area, 21,080 to be exact. This is definitely an area they could go back to test if 21,280 is broken. On the upside, of course, we're watching for a move back into this area, into the BC3 level zone, so from 21,480 and above, absolutely. The first barrier to get past, obviously, is this one, which is today's HW level, located around 21,413. So 21,413 to 21,430 is definitely the first obstacle we'll encounter. If it gets broken, I expect, well, a recovery of this area around 21,480 to 21,520. In short, I think they'll definitely test it. And then, well, we'll see how we get there and what the next developments could be, because, you know, a break of this level would really give a nice bullish push. After that, we'd probably expect a test of this other area, marked by this BC3 level, which more or less corresponds to our D2. So let's keep an eye on this whole area. I think that this morning we'll be working on this zone. Let's move on to ES, which is obviously in a similar situation, 5.95890. 5.9 is the area to watch on the downside. On the upside, we're watching 5.920, 25. That's the first obstacle. Basically, a breakout could push prices into the 5.930, 32 area, which are old levels but still very, very effective both as support and as resistance. And, basically, so a break above that could push prices into the 5.950 area. On the downside, as we said, 5.890, 5.9 is the area to watch, because otherwise we could easily go and test the 5.850 area, no problem, which more or less matches today's VIX area, with a 1% minimum. Let's move on to the other two American futures. Here it is. This is the Dow Jones, which, well, at the moment is holding up a bit better. You can see, it had this spike yesterday, but then it held up pretty well, with somewhat reduced volatility, which is usually the case overnight on this future. So, that could also be the reason. We'll see how things develop. Here we're obviously keeping an eye on 41.9, 42,000. I think that's the strongest support area. On the upside, we're watching 42.3, 42.4 because, well, except for that false breakout yesterday, which then reversed, this seems to me to be the area, the levels to watch, so 40. Here, 14.82 and 442 and 5. In short, this is the area to watch for any potential upward moves. Let's also take a clear look at the Russell, which, well, has also taken quite a hit. It's definitely the most affected by this situation that's developing. Let's keep an eye on the downside at 2060, which was basically reached yesterday. So let's monitor this level here, 2060. On the upside, let's watch this BC3 level, which is 2080. We've pointed it out several times. A break above 80 could easily push prices up to the 200 area. On the downside, of course, if 2060 is breached, prices could move down to this area here, 2035, 2040, which were the previous highs between 2027 and, well, this whole zone here. Let's move on to the DAX. Here it is. It also dropped quite a bit yesterday morning. The opening was pretty lively, and now we're recovering a bit of ground, so we're heading back to more or less Wednesday's close, which is a good recovery for now. We'll see if it has the strength to stay up, or if this is just a test before heading back down, because that could definitely be a plausible scenario, especially since this whole area is a resistance zone. So, pay attention to this level here. A breakout could push prices higher to test this area of highs, while a rejection of this breakout could send prices back down to retest the lows around 24,000. Let's take a look at oil. Of course, it also dropped recently yesterday and was rejected right at the attempt to break through the 63,000 area. It also trapped some people who might have thought there would be a breakout to new highs and a bigger move up. But no, here too we've come back down with a strong bearish push, and now we're back around the 60 and 50 area. So, a slightly wider range is starting to form here compared to before. Sometimes it narrows, sometimes it widens over the course of a few days, but basically we're still stuck in that same range, which we can identify as being between 64 and 59.50. Then, of course, we need to be careful about sudden spikes in volatility, but really 60 and 50, just look at how many times this area has held up. Even now it's holding. So, if this area continues to hold, it could push prices back up. 62 is the first hurdle, and then we'll see if they can find the strength to move higher. Let's look at gold, which yesterday found a bit of upward momentum as stocks were falling. At the moment, it's holding above 3,300, so well above the important support area at 3,280. So this could be a consolidation in this area for a possible new attempt at 3,350, or maybe it could go back down to test 3,280 again, possibly forming an increasingly pronounced trading range in this area. Let's take a look at SPX. Well, honestly, it's almost unnecessary to check because we're in pretty much the same situation as AES. Right now, we're holding above 5,900, which is the key area to watch, because a break below 5,900 could bring prices back down to this area around 5,850. That's the area to really keep an eye on, because if that breaks, it could open up some pretty bearish scenarios. On the upside, obviously, we need to keep an eye on 5,920, 5,925. Actually, 5,925 and 5,930, which I think is the key area that needs to be broken through. Let's also take a look at Bitcoin, which, while slipped a bit, it broke through those lows we pointed out around 26,500 or so, as we mentioned yesterday, and now it's working below that level. It did a test from below and then went back down to touch the next support level, which, let's take a look. Let's pull up an hourly chart for a moment so we can see it more clearly. So this is the area, but there are several levels, 106 or 105.6. Then we have 104.6, so there are quite a few. Further down, we can find 103.5, then 102 and 101.3 and 50. These are all points that, if there's an acceleration, will definitely be able to slow things down a bit, so they could slow down a drop and maybe even set up a bounce. On the upside, let's keep an eye on 106.5. because a break above 106.5 could bring prices back up into the upper area of this range, between 112 and 106, so towards 109 or 110, from a test of this area here. Perfect. With that said, we've reached the end of this daily analysis. As always, I invite you to leave a like on the video, follow me on social media, and we'll catch up later in the chat. Thanks everyone for your attention.